Thanks. Welcome. I want to introduce Carolyn Kindle, CEO of St. Louis City SC.
Ready?
Let's do this.
Well, hey, good afternoon, everybody, and happy Monday. Thank you so much for being here today. Certainly very exciting. We finally get to make another big announcement. But first and foremost, before we get started, thank you again for all your support. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that at this point in the season, didn't think that we would be at the top of the table, but here we are. So as you can imagine, the entire ownership group is so proud of our team. But with all that success being said, a couple months ago, we as an ownership group realized that we probably needed some more help, some more direction, and somebody that had experience in operating a professional soccer/football team. So that's when we began the search for City SC's first president and general manager. After an extensive search, lots of interviews, great talent, we were able to make a selection. We are very fortunate that not only did this gentleman sitting next to me pick St. Louis, but that St. Louis could also pick him as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Diego Gigliani, formerly from Manchester City Football Group, now officially with City SC. So welcome to Diego.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys all for coming as well. I've started to meet some of you, so a few familiar faces in the audience, but I'm sure over time I'll get to know all of you. And it's really a pleasure to be here in St. Louis, to be here as part of the MLS, and to be here in the United States. So what I wanted to do was first to open a little bit and introduce myself to all of you at the same time. I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to get to know each other much more over the following seasons. First, what I wanted to do was to tell you a little bit about who I am. Then I'll describe why I'm here, or why I'm so excited to be here at St. Louis City. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what I hope I can bring in the role, in the club, and hopefully in the country and the community. So first of all, in terms of who I am. Work-wise, I think it's all pretty straightforward. Nothing you wouldn't have been able to find online. But I spent my first 12 years in management consulting. And then after that, I spent 10 years at City Football Group. As Carolyn mentioned, City Football Group is the holding company that owns Manchester City Football Club, but also another 12 football clubs around the world. Also, in terms of who I am, one typically talks about where you're from, and my answer to that would be pretty complicated. I'm from many, many places. I was born in Argentina. My mother is from Uruguay. My wife is from Spain. My kids were born in the United Kingdom. So while I was born in Argentina, I would say that I've actually lived more years in the UK, Spain, and here in the US than in Argentina. I do support Argentina in the World Cup, but I feel very, very at home in many different countries, including here in the US, where it's a pleasure to be back. The third thing about me is that I love football, or soccer. It's going to take me some time to get used to calling it soccer. So for all the American football fans in the audience, my apologies if I mention football a couple more times. But yes, I love football. I was born in Argentina. It's obviously the national sport there. In 1986, when Argentina won the World Cup, I was living in Buenos Aires, so I remember as a 10-year-old going around the city and celebrating in the streets. And I fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with, at that point, Diego Maradona was the most important player in Argentina and probably in the world at that time. And some of my best memories have been related to the sport. I've been to every single World Cup since 1994 here in the U.S., except for one, always with my father and some other members of the family. So not only is it a sport that I love because of the sport, but especially because of the family memories that has brought. So that's an introduction to who I am. Now I'll tell you a little bit more about why I'm here. The first reason why I'm here is because of the project. The project here being St. Louis City SC, obviously a new club. The ability to really make an impact on the first few years of a club is something very unique in the world. But especially because I've been impressed with absolutely everything I've gotten to know about the club, the ownership group, and the league in those months that I spent getting to know Carolyn and the rest of the group. And I would put the emphasis on the ownership group. In football, one knows that everything really starts with ownership. And I've been very attracted and very impressed by the reputation that the family has, not just as very, very accomplished business people, but also as extremely responsible and generous members of the community. And the way in which they describe it, they don't do this because they love football. They do this because they love St. Louis, and because this is about more than just the soccer. And not only that intention, but also the commitment that they've shown once I got to know the stadium, the training facility, but also the way the fans have responded to the new club here, from years before it started to, of course, the first several months of season. The atmosphere has been amazing. Season card deposits, of course, kit sales or jersey sales. Fans have responded. And now the team has responded also on the pitch. And to see the sporting performance has invited the entire city to dream big and to see what's possible. So I've been really excited to learn all those things during the process, to get to know Carolyn, to, of course, also meet members of the family and the rest of the ownership group. Spent a lot of time with Lee and Jason that have been critical to the launch of the project as well. And now more and more time, of course, with Lutz, Bradley, and the rest of the sporting side. So that's the first reason why I'm here, the project. The second reason why I'm here is because of the market and the opportunity in the U.S. So everyone knows the U.S. is the largest sports market in the world, and football is, while more and more popular, still has room to grow in this country. Soccer, of course. And when you look at the MLS, there's been no real hockey stick in terms of the MLS in the last several years. But as someone that has been working in the football world globally, I have seen how year by year the MLS continues to become a much more consolidated and serious project in world football. One can see franchise values and how those have increased year on year. The amount of great ownership groups around the country that are creating great infrastructure. And with all of that, better players come to play. Partners like Apple join. Of course, now the arrival of Messi. And all of that suggests that the MLS is still on a great path with a bright future ahead. And of course, when you look at the market, also all these international competitions coming to the U.S. in the next few years is going to make it the place to be in world football. Copa America next year, Club World Cup the year after, FIFA World Cup the year after that, and even exciting competitions like the Leagues Cup that has just started. And now the last reason why I'm here is because of the city and St. Louis. Again, also a process of getting to know a city that I didn't know very much about before. And I've learned two things. One is that it is really a soccer city. It's not just what one says. You can see that there's deep history and connection to the sport from many, many years back. And most importantly, you can see a super, super engaged fan base all around the city, and everyone seems to be talking about the club. But it also seems like a great place to live. And at the end of the day, these decisions are, of course, professionally driven, but needs to fit personally. I'm coming here with my wife and 2 young kids. And of course, we want to make sure that we're going to be someplace where we can see us raising our family and the kids being happy. And everything that I've heard is that it's a great place to live with families. So that's why I'm here, the project, the market, and the city. Lastly, what I hope I can bring, well, I've worked 10 years in football club management now at least one of the most important organizations in world football. In that 10 years, I've had the opportunity to work at scale with football clubs. Because City Football Group is the owner and or operator of multiple clubs, I've been able to work with 11 football clubs directly over those 10 years. And I've seen a lot by working with all those football clubs over those years. I've been honored to participate and play a role in 20 trophies over that time, 7 promotions from second division to first division, 3 relegations, many, many manager hires, over 100 player signings and sales. We've hired CEOs, we've grown management teams, we've signed big sponsorship deals, built new facilities, and even navigated through a pandemic. So I hope I can bring all that football club experience here to St. Louis City SC, to work with Carolyn and the rest of the team, Jason, Lee, the board members, Lutz, Bradley, and everyone else, to partner with everyone and to make the owner's vision come true. A lot has been accomplished to date at this club. Everyone should feel extremely proud, both people in the club, but also the community and the MLS more broadly. But we can't forget this is still year one, and football clubs have 100+ years of history ahead of them. So it'll be an honor to participate with this club over the first several years of its life and hope to create strong foundations for the future. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Diego. Tom, you want to start us off?
Hi, Diego. Among the many teams you've worked with, is there anything comparable among those teams you've worked with to St. Louis City and what's going on right now?
I mean, I would say many of the football clubs have a lot of comparable things. In the end, it's running football clubs, and football clubs are all about winning on the pitch. They're about developing talent. They're about growing revenues and being sustainable as a business, building great infrastructure. So a lot of those things are very common to here. What I would say is a couple of things that are more unique about this project here is, in many of the cases in the other football clubs that I worked with, we were needing to operate and build at the same time. So we were coming into clubs that needed to be transformed and needed to be grown. Similar story to how Man City, when ownership acquired Man City, it was a mid-sized regional club, and now it's possibly the number one football club in the world when it comes to, on pitch or off pitch, highest revenue and highest brand value. And we've done a lot of that with all the other clubs that I worked in. So that's quite different from here, because the hard work about establishing a lot of those things and building that has been done by Carolyn and the team. I arrive here with a incredible amount of infrastructure that's built at a very high standard, season cards that are already oversold, and we have a waiting list, key sponsorship agreements signed. So a lot of that build part has been done. So that makes this project a bit more unique. The other part I would say is, of course, the market challenges here are much more unique to some of those other football clubs. Here, one has to wear two hats, the hat of how do I grow this club, but also the hat of how do I grow this sport? And that's also a unique challenge here at St. Louis City.
Was this something you were looking to do, to branch off to league? Because you're at a pretty good place, but did you something you wanted to do to have a team that was your own to be president of? And
yeah, I mean, I think I would say, I'm not a person who changes jobs often. I worked 10 years in City Football Group, and my previous 12 years in one organization that changed the owners a couple of times and changed brands. But both of those times were long times in each of those organizations. And if I chose to come here, it's because what I saw here was really unique. It is really a great project at a great time with great owners in a great city, and all that felt like the right moment to join.
You've mentioned world football, the global game, quite a few times this morning. Where do you see City in that global village in about 5 years, or whatever your time frame is? Because it's clear what's going on here. You're dragging St. Louis into the global community, kicking and screaming in some cases, but here we are, right? Where do you see it, given your experience, in 3, 5, you pick the number, years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that's pretty undeniable is that when you do have a sports team that also performs well, the amount of visibility that brings to a city is can be transformative, and it is definitely very, very high impact. I'm sure that internationally, St. Louis, over time, will be known more and more because of its football club or because of its soccer team. There are many people around the world that won't have much of a view at all about St. Louis, but will start to as a result of what the team here has been doing. I think the future really depends on a large part on what happens with the league. I think it'll be very hard for any club in this country to really break out into the international, large brand, setting aside the Messi impact, without the league being able to grow and be relevant. So I think a lot of that focus needs to be with those two hats that I mentioned. How do we make sure that the country capitalizes on this amazing opportunity in the next few years, with Messi being in the league, but also the World Cup and all these other international competitions? It is a moment in time for sport in the U.S., and we have to do everything we can as all the different stakeholders in that to look back on it in those 5 years, as you said, and see real change. So that is the most important thing that I think we need to focus on, and how do we make sure that happens. And then, what I would say is, as a club, I think the way to become well-known and well-respected is to focus on the day-to-day and to let that happen naturally. It's not like there is going to be a broad strategic plan around how to grow the brand internationally. This is going to be happening if you're doing the right things in terms of the sporting side, the business side, and that will just happen. That will just happen. And that's what we're going to be focusing on, trying to make sure that we are doing a good job at winning matches, at developing local talent, at having unique stories to tell in terms of what we're doing with the stadium, the sustainability angle. There's so many great stories that already exist and that we hope to be able to tell. And over time, I'm sure that we'll look back and we'll say, wow, St. Louis is now a recognized city and sports club thanks to that growth in the league and doing those things right.
So with the other two professional sports teams in town, they each have like two presidents. One is president of hockey operations, one handles the business. One is president of baseball operations, one handles the business. What type of role will you have in terms of soccer operations? Will you be doing a little bit of both, or will you be more of the business operations of St. Louis City SC?
I think the way in which the club here has decided to set up is the same way in which I'm used to the clubs being set up at City Football Group, which is the clubs need to have let's call it a general manager, and then a sporting director, with the sporting director reporting into the general manager, rather than side by side, which could create the risk of silos and not a fully integrated organization. But it's also very important to recognize what my role will be in that sporting area. In the same way in which we would do it at City Football Group is how we intend to do it here, which is respecting that sporting decisions need to be taken by sporting experts. Not because one is reporting to the other does that mean that I am going to at any point overrule Lutz when it comes to the selection of a player or the selection of a manager. These have to be taken by people that know the sport. And while fans often get confused into thinking that they know the sport and can take those decisions, I think professionally run organizations respect that these decisions need to be taken by the sporting experts. So, in summary, while Lutz will report into me in my role as general manager, he will continue being the main decision maker when it comes to sporting decisions. And I hope to partner with him and help him with everything I can to complement on the business aspects of those decisions.
Hi, Diego. When Don Garber came in for City's first home game, he kind of made the rounds, maybe did the toy coin toss, went into all the broadcast booths. It was a pleasure to have him in for pregame. He was our first pregame guest at City's opening game. And he made a very big point about the growth of the sport and growing very strategically. St. Louis had been barking for a team for quite a long time, and he acknowledged that and said he felt that this was the right time and that growth needs to be, the timing needs to be right. Is that something that you'll be working with him on also, or looping Don Garber in, or that kind of strategic growth to St. Louis City?
No, absolutely. I know Carolyn plays an important role in those MLS conversations as well. Just last week, we were both over in Washington, D.C., where Carolyn, you were participating in several key Board of Governor meetings with Don and with several other club owners. And I think, of course, everyone across the league feels really responsible for helping the MLS and helping the development of the sport in the U.S. So if I can help in any way, I will for sure reach out. I know that with experience, with these 11 football clubs that I worked in across the world, I worked with those leagues as well and worked with those local federations on trying to see how we could grow the sport in different ways. It rarely was the same situation of being a smaller sport in those countries. It usually was already being the leading sport. But there were other challenges that we needed to work together with other club owners or other club CEOs or presidents, whether it was growing revenue or improving talent development. There are always needs to compete on the pitch with our other clubs, but collaborate off the pitch with them to help grow different things that are of relevance to the league.
I think it's important to point out here too. One of the main reasons we wanted to bring Diego is because our role is, especially my role, probably more specifically, is really kind of now going to the entire region, and that's really where my passion is and my heart is how do I continue to further St. Louis, the growth of St. Louis, having city be obviously a large part of that, but that's really sort of the Taylor family motto. And so I think once we got everything built, as I've said before, building a club in a stadium is one thing. It's very different than operating a club in a stadium. And I think one of the things we realized as an ownership group is we really don't have that experience. So I think, again, we're so fortunate to have Diego on board because that's really where he excels. It also allows us to continue to develop the city brand, hopefully outside of the region, certainly partnering with MLS, other clubs as well. I mean, certainly Leagues Cup is a great opportunity to showcase, St. Louis outside of, the U.S. border. So there's still plenty to do and a lot more to come, I think. But most importantly, we're just very thankful to have somebody with expertise in all of these areas that you've mentioned, whether it's sporting or business operations. But, personally, it allows me to continue to go do the things that I really enjoy, and that is how do I continue to further the opinion and elevate, how people view St. Louis.
I wanted to ask on the business side, you mentioned some of the key metrics so far around jersey sales, season ticket sales. As you shift into this role, I guess what opportunity do you see to grow revenue, to grow the brand, and enhance the business side of the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've definitely set a high bar for year one. I think everyone can see the great results so far. We're obviously still 2/3 of the season through, so this even year one isn't done, but definitely set already a high bar. Even when you compare some of those metrics across the MLS, St. Louis City is performing at the top or in the top 3 of pretty much all those metrics, which is pretty impressive for a city the size of St. Louis, and for a brand new franchise. So that will be part of the challenge. How do we go and continue to first sustain this? There is also the risk many times that first years of franchises are sometimes the most positive because of the excitement that generates in the city. And we know that one has to sustain that over years. So that's definitely going to be one challenge. And then we just need to always be thinking about how do we grow. And it's not just growing revenue. There are other priorities that are equally important, that we need to make sure that we are, reaching out to the community and are being a, good neighbor. And of course, on the sporting side, there's opportunities, the academy development, even the potential to one day participate in the player transfer market in terms of buying and selling players. So there's opportunities everywhere, even though the starting point is for sure incredibly positive and a pleasure to arrive in some place that's working so well.
How much MLS experience have you had? How well do you know? Because it's a league that operates differently than just about every other league in the world. Yeah,
when I joined City Football Group, I think I still say we, but City Football Group acquired the NYCFC franchise back in 2013. I think it was like 5 or 6 months after I joined. And in my first role, I had responsibility also for NYCFC's media and marketing teams. Now, that was a long time ago, and that was mostly during the startup phase. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I haven't had any direct relation with NYCFC. Of course, as part of the global leadership team of City Football Group, I have remained very familiar with the development of the MLS and what's happening and some of the strategic things that were coming to the league. Of course, the ongoing development of the clubs there. So I would say I definitely knew the MLS well before arriving. What I didn't know deeply were all the regulations involved in terms of course, the salary cap, TAM, GAM, and all of that kind of familiar with the terms for sure, but wasn't as deeply knowledgeable of operating within those boundaries and making sure that it's part of the day-to-day way of working. There are definitely things that I will need to catch up on, but the way in which I have worked over the last, especially the last 5 or 6 years, working with all these clubs around the world, is each country has its own regulation, and you have to arrive and understand them all and be able to operate within those restrictions very quickly. So I'm very confident that with the team that already exists in place, on the finance side, of course on the legal regulatory side, on the sporting side, that do understand those ways of working very deeply, I will pick that up quickly and be able to help.
When you were overseeing that group of teams for City Football Group, did you do a lot of travel? Were you heading off to Bolivia and Japan and places like that on a regular basis?
Yes, absolutely. I think, football clubs, I think it's very hard to be credible and to be impactful on any sports club without being local enough. You need to understand the city, the fans. You need to, of course, get to know the people that are working there. You need to be at games because, matches are the lifeblood and the emotions of all football clubs. You can't do that from far away. So yes, I traveled quite a bit. Very, great, very enjoyable travel to be able to go around the world and watch football matches in different countries with very different realities. But yeah, it was a big part of the role.
This has got to be a much saner life then for you, just having one team and not having to worry about your next flight for wherever it would be.
Yeah, it'll definitely allow more focus on one team, for sure. Of course, there will also be quite a bit of travel for away matches. I hope to attend as many as I can, get to know other stadiums, get to know other ownership groups and management teams. So I do hope to still retain some travel, but maybe a little bit less far away than some of the travel was before.
Won't need your passport, though, quite as much. Be more domestic.
That's true.
He is learning Midwestern weather and weather delays. We had a very interesting conversation on the way down here. That's something that he has not experienced is pop-up thunderstorms, tornado warnings, flooding.
I thought I'd seen it all with working in 11 football clubs, but already so many weather disruptions to matches in the last month that I've been here. It's been pretty eye-opening.
How do you feel about promotion and relegation?
How do I feel? I mean, from the perspective of where I'm speaking now, I love the MLS and the fact that there are no risk of relegation. I think in the football markets where football has been around for 100, 125 years, I think the concept of promotion and relegation is very ingrained in football fans and even football clubs. So I think in those markets where that's the way it's always been, it would be very hard to change that. And it does also create a lot of excitement for fans and a lot of excitement for clubs that can get promoted and make their way to the top. And here, that's not the way it was born. It's not the way other sports teams work. And it obviously allows one to plan and work for the long term very, very, very well.
Carolyn, what did you like about Diego in the interview process? What made him stand out?
Well, I think one of the things was first and foremost the personality and, being able to explain everything that we've built and how hard we've worked and to have near perfection, if I can be as bold as to say that. You needed a unique personality that would come in and work with us, not try to change everything. We didn't need a disruptor. We didn't need, it's nothing's broken. And so during the interview process, it did make it a very unique position because when you're saying we actually are okay with the fact that we've gone as far as we can, we need you to come in and just continue to maintain and enhance, not fix. Some people didn't find that attractive, but Diego obviously did. I think one of the points he hit on is this is a crucial time for the club. He's part of, sort of the second 2.0 version of this. And so I think the personality fit, obviously, the pedigree, the resume, I can go on and on about that, but I think it was really just getting to know Diego and the because it was a couple of months process. And I think the whole team felt really good about bringing in somebody who, once again, wasn't trying to disrupt, but just continue to enhance and be a good business partner. And we're very fortunate. I mean, our team is amazing. And so I, as a CEO, had to take care of them as well. And so it was sort of the perfect mix of knowledge and personalities to really continue to go down this path of just being a premier MLS club.
Diego, I think you've been to a few games at City Park. Have you enjoyed the home game experience there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my first game was the match against Sporting KC several months back. That was before officially joining. So it was a pleasure to be at that game as the first experience. And yeah, every game I've been to so far has been incredibly impressive. I mean, I think a full stadium anywhere, regardless of size, feels amazing. But then the atmosphere that's created here is really powerful, and it's just as exciting as it is to watch football matches in countries with a long history of football being the #1 sport. So yeah, the fan base here is incredible. I've had the pleasure also to attend a supporter commission that was organized last week and meet some of the people that are responsible and sort of lead some of the supporter groups, and to see how much they care about the club. You know, a club that this club, of course, is the first season. I know some of the fans come from the previous USL club that existed here, but you can see these are people that are deeply passionate about this football club, you know, and they spend a lot of their time caring about it and making sure that the experience is the best in the MLS. So yeah, I love coming to the games here, and I'm looking forward to Thursday night.
Diego, we've had the United States women's and men's national teams here. A lot of the different opponents have said, talked about how you have the atmosphere at City Park and how great City Park is. How can that be a selling point? Just the stadium itself, how beautiful it is, how much intimidating it is, how much people love playing here. How can that be a selling point for you guys as you guys try to make St. Louis City a global team?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is just like it is a visualization of what the project is about. No, it's about making sure that we are engaging with the local community and people care about the club. So seeing so many fans fill out every single game and cheer and sing and beat the drums and wave flags and the march around the stadium when they get in and they're queuing up an hour and a half before kickoff. All those things are visual representation of what this project was about. No, trying to create that engagement with the community. So I think that it's all about trying to sustain that and help it to continue to grow and flourish. And I think it'll help reinforce in everyone's mind that St. Louis is a soccer city, and hopefully St. Louis City will make all those fans be proud.
We good? Anyone else? I'm going to ask one that wasn't asked of Diego. I know we have small sample size so far with Leagues Cup, but what's your thoughts about this new tournament that has been happening, given all the experience you have around the world globally with these sorts of large projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great experiment of continuing to try to find ways of connecting the U.S. League with the Mexican League. No, I think when one looks at how popular is football as a sport in the U.S., one sees that it is definitely more and more popular over the last 10 years. But then you see different groups of popularity within football. You see people that follow, the Premier League or the Champions League, and you see people that follow Liga MX, and you see people follow the MLS. But it's not that anyone that loves football follows all of them. So the more that we can do to cross-promote and to give ourselves those opportunities to get audiences to engage with your local club here as well, I think are great to trying to translate a lot of that football fandom into MLS fandom. And obviously it's also a good opportunity sporting-wise to just test all of us against Liga MX clubs, which of course are some of them are 100-year clubs with long traditions and have won a lot. So it's a great sporting opportunity to test ourselves at that level and see what we learn and how we can continue to improve.
Awesome. All right. Thank you guys all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks all.